How would removing raid buffs affect civilians? I've always been a fan of removing raid buffs as a concept because at like a high level for me, like us creating our raid comp, it's so much more creative and it allows you to like outplay other guilds in your ability to run different comps and also your ability of your players to actually multi-class different classes well to be able to pull it off. That's what I like about it. But I actually think raid buffs are good for the game in raiding. In Mythic Plus, totally different story. Mythic Plus, I think they could remove raid buffs and it would be a good thing for Mythic Plus. I actually don't think it would be a good thing for Mythic raiding. I think the fact that every guild knows you basically want at least one of each spec for recruiting purposes is a very healthy thing for the game and keeping guilds alive. I think it's very good. I don't think this was good. Like, I don't think BFA was good. The only reason BFA was good in some people's eyes was it was closer to having 0. But, like, when we got to, like, Shadowlands numbers, it was like, okay, we're ramping up the raid buffs here. And then we got, these came throughout the expansion. Didn't have both paladin buffs right away. And it got to the point where, like, okay, now that we have almost everyone has a raid buff, they should just give one to everyone. Why Rogue? Rogue gives a DR poison to the boss. Makes the boss do like roughly 3% less damage, but only on things that are sourced to the boss. In my opinion, the Rogue raid buff is the most sittable raid buff, except for like DKs on a fight with no grips. But like Rogue raid buff is turbo sittable because there are bosses, like even on like any boss really, like probably only half the damage comes from the boss. I'm still mad at you for making Blizzard remove Red Aura. I think Red Aura should have been removed. Why the fuck does any class have 2 raid buffs? Doesn't make any sense. It's bad. The only reason you're mad is because you happen to be the class that had 2. But if like you're looking at it from the health of the overall game, it's absolutely fucking stupid that anyone has 2 raid buffs. It's dumb. You should have removed it. Get mad. Stay mad. Monk buff is also meh. Yeah, Monk buff isn't great. Monk buff used to be insane. Like, Monk buff was probably the single best raid buff in Dragonflight. They gave you 5% fizz damage. They gave you 8% increased healing taken and 4% avoidance that wasn't really avoidance, which means it didn't DR with actual avoidance. It was like extra. I mean, it was so broken. It was probably pound for pound the best raid buff. Not the best dungeon raid buff, but the best raid buff. Best raid buff. But now it sucks. They removed the 2 things that made it good. Oh, it's still worth it, though. Definitely still worth it. Why do you have Pally twice in Dragonflight? Because you needed 2 paladins. The first one brought Devotion Aura, the second one brought Red Aura. They were both irreplaceably great buffs. You needed both of them.